there is an extraordinary session at July 7th in Niger, and they are going to discuss what can we expect from this now that over the minimum amount of states have ratified the CFTA. What do we expect at the Niger summit?
Yes, that's a good one. If I borrow your own term, it was theoretical first, the CFTA. There were so many comments here and there, whether it will happen or not, but now it has happened already. Within the legal structure, you'll find 22 countries should ratify the agreement to enter into force. That has also been achieved. In fact, we are 24 now, 24 countries have, and for sure it will increase very soon. So now these countries, they have agreed for this agreement. So what is next? It's implementation. According to their agreement, they have to implement it. That means when African traders are moving around, or if African goods and services are crossing borders, that means these rules will apply as promised by these countries. So for the implementation, there will be a secretariat that will be fully dedicated to implement this agreement. And of course, like you said, in less than a month, there will be a formal launch process, launch ceremony in Niamey. That means AfCFTA has entered into force. In fact, it has entered into force on May 30. And this will be just to announce for the continent and actually for the whole world at large as well, that Africa has entered into a new era of having its own free trade area, and it has come into force. And once this is done, I mean, the implementation process, so there are the governance issues, how this secretariat will govern itself, and there are also areas where the agreement, when it comes to implementation, then you'll go into the details, and they say the devils are in the details. So you have to refine all those areas where it needs necessary, and you have to clarify all these things. So in a way, implementation would be another stage for it, and then on the other side, of course, negotiation will continue, and this will be only for goods and services. But there are other supporting agreements that should also come to support these areas, the goods and the services. So there will be a next phase of negotiation on investment. How do we treat investments coming from Africa to other African countries? And there will be competition, because competition is also another key element of trade. Otherwise,
for healthy economic
exactly, the consumers are involved, the quality issues are there, so on and so forth. And then intellectual property rights also. Those who are innovative and creative people, they have to be protected. So those kind of protocols will also come on the way. It's a lot of work, of course, but at least we have laid the foundation. Now, to the next level, it would be one very historical moment for Africa next month, when it's announced that Africa is ready to trade with itself.
Well, it's well and good that the announcement is made next month. But what happens after that? Okay, we have announced what's going to be the first step to get the states, African states, to take the first step, get into the theoretical, practicing the theory that you have already put in. You celebrate, okay, we have done this far, you have done an enormous amount of work, bringing all those countries together, laying the foundation and everything. But after that, what's going to be the next step? Okay.
Now, the politicians, they have done their homework, at least up to this stage. Now, the business people, the ones to to enter and start to test what has so far been done exactly. So business people will read the promises made by all these countries, and they go and they test it there. If, for example, maybe we didn't talk about this, but what does it include when it comes to good, this CFTA? In the CFTA, you'll find the plan is to have every goods to go through all these African countries freely at zero tariff rates. Of course, that could be a concern for many, so there are exceptions. So now, even if the plan was 100%, let us start at 90% of the tariff lines to make them zero. And the rest, the 10%, is given as a leeway for some countries to address their own national policies. It could be industrialization, it could be other food security issues, so on and so forth. So they cannot implement all of it. So they can put their policy agenda within this. There are what they call sensitive, 7 sensitive lists, 7% of the sensitive lists. There are 3% as excluded lists, which are not going to be liberalized. And now I'm putting it in technical terms, but the 90% will be liberalized. That means through time, between 5 to 10 or 15 years, there will be no tariff at all on 90% of tariff lines. And each member state or state party, they will announce, these are the products you can freely trade. And this is where the business people, they could be manufacturers, they could be suppliers, so on and so forth. They will test the water, meaning they will ship their product to those countries. If they face any challenge, there is another avenue where you can resolve your disputes. There is a dispute settlement mechanism as well. This will be what you'll be looking at the next stage. And in fact, looking at this development, already those business people are positioning themselves like in terms of investment, looking at the potential of those countries, or it could be geographical, or it could be labor issues, or it could be, the business environment in some of these countries. They are positioning and going there, doing their own due diligence. How much would they cost them if they do business from here to other African countries, so on and so forth. It's, it's for us, it's all, peaceful and very stable. But those business people, they know how to exploit all these openings and opportunities. So we expect a lot to happen in this after this has entered into force. It will, for sure, it will happen. Actually, not only within Africa, those from outside also, they would like to come and invest, to do business as a joint venture, so on and so forth, with Africans on those strategic places and markets they find to do. The same way for services as well. Within the services, you have at least as a starting point business services like professionals, telecommunication, finance, transport, tourism, so on and so forth. Those will also be liberalized in a sense. Maybe they have a different
it's an open market. They can go structure. Anywhere they want.
Yes, you regulate, most of the time you regulate services. So for liberalization, you'll just check and see whether some of those regulations are hindering the services trade. The same way like goods, so you will negotiate and liberalize those services. So you'll see so many business to actually, and of course, the whole plan and rationale is to unleash this potential Africans have by trading themselves, between and amongst themselves. They will exploit the resource, they will create jobs, and at the end, of course, better life would be there for the African nationals.
So while we are talking about Africans coming together, where is the place of international partners going to be?
International partners, they are always there. Of course, they are supportive of this process one way or another. It could be through assisting the process, or it could be through technical assistance. It could be financial, so on and so forth. At least the laying the foundation even if the ideal scenario which African leaders are looking at, even if Africa will have to run its own business by its own peoples and so on and so forth, there are many partners supporting this process. And as long as this agenda and interest is still negotiated and run by the African countries, I think that is still a good thing, and I don't think it will just go away like that. We need the partners, we need this assistance. It could be even sharing experience of their own. If they have advanced system at their own end, they could also share some of those experiences to us. And of course, I mean, if you look at the way things are going, the global system, you can't just pull yourself out and do everything by yourself. At some point, you need partners here and there, but at least you have to maintain the unity.
We have to join forces with the African countries.
And that is what is happening. I mean, of course, the reforming Africa is one big agenda where Africa can finance itself when it comes to finance, and it's going well, which will perhaps take shape soon. But we don't do everything within Africa. We do also so many things. It could be global peace, it could be environment, it could be global economic scenarios. So there are so many venues and forums where Africa is also interacting. And for your interest also, in so many ways and decisions, it has been pronounced that the African heads of state, in many ways they said that Africa has to speak with one voice. Negotiating or discussing on these global issues, it could be at UN or other places. Africa needs to speak with one voice so that Africa's interest will be protected. And this AfCFTA is giving a very good impetus for this, because if you want to maintain the objectives of AfCFTA, then you will have to speak with one voice. And in fact, it goes to the extent of saying that before the AfCFTA and such African agenda take a very good root and effect, no other African country should go outside and do some agreements with third parties that will affect the objective of this. This is, on its own, it's a foreign policy in the making for Africa.
So all African countries have to go through this in order to negotiate with outside countries, like the European countries. If they want to do some business with them, they have to comply with this.
I would prefer the word comply instead of going through. We haven't yet created that system where everything will be checked and cleared. Not yet, but at least they are being reminded, they are being informed that this is where we want to go, this is the objective we have, and of course you are free to negotiate with third parties. Then when you face a challenge, whether you have to sign it or not, or whether it will have a negative effect on the continent, these are the objectives you will have to look at, and of course then respect that. That means if everyone does the same thing, at least the objective will be maintained, and the African agenda. Otherwise, if you do it on your own here and there, so many contradictions will come. The whole idea of forming these continental institutions is to avoid fragmentation. And you keep your unity by avoiding fragmentation. And that means you play around certain basic rules of unity, which everyone will have to respect. And that is the way to go. I think it will take effect.
I think it is really a wonderful idea, because it's not just for trade, like you have said. It's basically joining Africans together for the ultimate goal to have a stronger, more united and more developed continent, be it in environmental or social issues, something that they have to face with the rest of the world with, it's better to have a joined hand rather than single-handedly going and dealing with this kind of projects. So I think it's a really brilliant idea that you have, and thank you, Mr. Million, for coming here and giving us an insight on the Continental Free Trade Area. And I'm sure in the future you will come back and keep us up to date on what's going on Continental Free Trade Area and how it's going on, what's practically being done. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Well, dear viewers, that's all we have on this edition on African Continental Free Trade Area and the agreements that are being signed. And Mr. Million has explained to us right from the start how it's going on and what challenge it is facing, and in the future what's going to happen when it comes to one Africa, one continent that we all dream to see. So that's all we have for this edition of African View. Till next time, I'm Yuritat Masu. Bye.
Next week on African View.
In Ethiopia, we have every year, according to tourism minister's data, maybe we get 800,000 or 1 million tourists.
What type of hotels are available and their prices and locations. They're trained in tourism, they go in other businesses because they are not satisfied in place where they work.
They sing about Kenya, Jambo, Jambo, Kenya, they sing, you know.
Ethiopia is in the list of countries in hygiene.